I'm all about teamwork, but for me, I like to have a little bit of autonomy and make some decisions.
By far, the most important thing if you want to be successful is hiring the right people.
You're hire for skills, hire for passion, hire for attitude. But one of those three is going to start slipping somewhere.
Yeah,
I would
agreed.
prefer that you slip on skills because those are trainable. Please welcome to the show, Dan Cockerell. Dan, welcome.
Hey, Jeff, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. So before we jump all into all the questions and answers and stuff like that, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
Most of my adult life I spent with the Walt Disney Company. Went to Boston University, studied political science, had no idea what I wanted to do, and ended up working at Disney in college. And when I graduated, I went back down to Walt Disney World and started parking cars at Epcot. And did that
Really?
for about, I went down there and said, hey, I'd love to come back. And what do you have? And they said, what do you want to do? I said, well, whatever I'm qualified for, I'm ready to do. And they said, you should park cars. And so I said, yes, I will do that.
Okay.
You take whatever you get and you do it well. So I did that for about 6 months. And I was lucky because at the time they were going to be opening, Disney was opening Disneyland Paris, Euro Disney at the time, in April of 92, the following year. So I was there for 6 months. And before I'd left BU, I applied for a work visa to work in Europe with the hopes I'd be able to work over in France. So sure enough, I was able to go over there. I went in January 1st, 92 to France. I knew about 5 words of French. I had 6 months of parking experience. So they put me out in the parking lot because that's what I knew how to do. And I got there in January. We opened the park in April of 92. And I spent the next 5 years over there. My wife is from France. We'd been dating and finally decided this seems like it's going to work out. Let's get married so I can get my green card. So I stayed over there and worked in frontline positions for Disneyland Paris for 5 years. And in 97, I moved back to Florida and spent the next 21 years at Walt Disney World. I worked in parks, headed off and did resort hotels for about 6 years. And then eventually came back to parks. In the last 9 years, I was with Disney. I was the vice president at Epcot and then Disney's Hollywood Studios. In the last 3 years, the vice president of Magic Kingdom. And by that 2017, 2 kids were out of the house and one was going to be out of the house soon. And my wife and I started talking about what was the next chapter of our lives. And I was kind of like, there is no question. You just retire from Disney like everyone does. And so we talked about it for a year. And I finally got the courage to say, okay, let's go try something else. So I left in May of 2018. And Valerie had worked for the Disney Institute as a facilitator. And so we started our own consulting company. We sold our house in Orlando. We moved to Colorado and we're renting a 2-bedroom apartment now. And we're still trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up. But we've learned a lot about being entrepreneurs the past 3.5 years, not only, during I'd say the booming times in 2018, but when COVID hit, you really learn how to be an entrepreneur. When all your workshops and keynotes get canceled, you figure out new ways to do things. So we've created some college courses on leadership and customer service. We created an online community that I run. We have a podcast, and we have our fingers in lots of different pies to figure out how to kind of do this thing.
So you were an overnight success.
Yeah, it only took 30 years.
It took 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So going into the Disney experience, right? You spent nearly 20 years at Disney. They have an unmistakable brand, right? It's a magical experience. You go into the Magic Kingdom, etc. How does that kind of translate into a candidate experience?
We've concluded, we've done, obviously, a big company like Disney, lots of research. We've worked with lots of companies to figure out how to, be successful. And I'm a big fan of the Gallup organization. If you've ever done Strength Finders, Soar with Your Strengths, there's some great books out there. And they kind of have a list of the things that you need to do for companies to be successful. And Disney agrees with this, Gallup does, and I do. By far, the most important thing if you want to be successful is hiring the right people. Because after that, you can pay them more, you can give them benefits, you can build relationships with them, you can reward and recognize them. But if you don't start with the raw talent, you can only get so far. And so Disney takes that very seriously. So it's evolved over the years. There used to be a time when you could walk up the ramp at what we call casting and apply for a job. And those days are over now. You need to go online first and take an assessment. And a lot of people get kind of caught up in that. Doesn't seem very fair that a computer is going to decide whether you get the interview or not. And the reality is these assessments, they're not going to guarantee that you always hire the right person, but they really help out to make sure you don't hire the wrong person. So just starting out, I've talked to people who had called me when I worked at Disney and said, Dan, I did the online assessment and they said, I'm not qualified, or they found other candidates. What can I do? And what I tell them is, well, look, you after I think it's 6 months, maybe you can reapply. But I said, you're really lucky, because if the assessment said Disney didn't decide that you would be probably a successful candidate at Disney, this is the best thing you could know, because we want to hire people who are going to be right fits in that culture. And however you answer the interview, you probably aren't a right fit. It doesn't mean you're talented. It doesn't mean that you can go do great things. It's just in the Disney environment, what Disney's looking for probably isn't what you bring. And so that's okay. It's fine. And they're doing you a favor. And they say, well, I really want to work for Disney. So bottom line is you take the assessment and you get invited in. Before we interview candidates, there's a whole video. And we show them, we say, look, this is what it's like to work at Walt Disney World. And we show them people working out in the heat, working with like crowds and crowds and crowds of people, working on teams. We try to make sure everyone knows clearly how regimented the operation is, because when you're dealing with over 50 million guests a year, you have to have a very team-oriented, very disciplined, regimented way to do things. And some people walk out and they say, look, I don't want to work here. I didn't know all those kids were going to be there, right? I don't like working with kids. And once again, we're not judging. Yeah, a self-select. So Disney does a really good job of leading with the reality of what it's like to work there, making sure people understand what the values are and what is valued in the work experience. And by doing that, people often will self-select out, and they say, well, that's not who I am. Some candidates will say, look, I like to work independently. Well, that's great, but you shouldn't work at Disney, because people don't work independently at Disney. You work interdependently. Everyone's counting on each other. No one can get anything done by themselves. And so that experience could be frustrating for some, because they don't even get up into the door to interview. And for others, once they get in there, we're pretty, we ask lots of questions to make sure they're going to be a right fit. And what we've concluded over time is you really hire for three things: skills, passion, and attitude. Most jobs you hire for Disney, we really aren't concerned about your skills, because there's a really good chance you've never worked on Big Thunder Mountain. There may be a chance you've never worked in a hotel, but we're going to train you how to do that. So we're going to teach you the skills you need to do the job. And that's what we're going to do. Now, we hire architects, we hire IT experts, we hire engineers. They have to come in with certain skills. So that doesn't apply to everybody, but many jobs, you don't have to have the skill set, because we'll train you on whatever system we use. Passion is important. Why do you want to be here? Is it because you saw the commercial on TV and you want to hang out with Mickey Mouse and wave to people? And let's make sure you understand what the job's really about. But by far, the most important thing is attitude. We like to hire candidates that have great attitudes. Now, when you talk about attitude, that you can define that many different ways. The way we define it is people have great attitudes are able to overcome obstacles and barriers. They find a way. They're problem solvers. They don't give up. They have grit. And in a place like Disney or any other company you're working in, these days, those are the kinds of people you want. They need to think on their feet. They need to be intrinsically motivated, and they have to have a fire to want to figure things out and not have to rely on someone all the time to tell them what to do. And those are some of our best employees. So I know I went off a little bit further than your question asked, but it's pretty regimented. And we don't say, well, that person that's going to work on custodial, we're not going to be as we're going to let that slide because they only empty trash cans. We're going to really focus on the other jobs. We are that serious about hiring the right people in all the roles at Disney, because everyone contributes to the guest experience. And it only takes one person to derail that whole experience. And it's hard to imagine that when you're dealing with upwards of 70,000 employees, but that's the reality of it. In good times when the economy's strong, we probably hire people. We will hire maybe 6 and 10. When the economy is not as good, we'll hire 3 and 10. There's always ratios. There's real business needs. But overall, the goal is to keep that standard and keep that bar where it is so we can hire the best people.
So you mentioned a couple of specific rules, right? So I guess that kind of aligns to the company value: hire for skills, hire for passion, hire for attitude. Um, you know, is that really what you're talking about? Is aligning your messaging to those company values?
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, alignment is important. We want to make sure, that, and these are very common sense things, but if you're in the hospitality, you need to hire people who want to serve. And we have people at Disney maybe who aren't as great at service, but we put them in other roles. They're not in front of our guests. They're good at other things. And so to your point, there's an alignment there. A lot of companies, I think they put values up on a poster and they hope everyone memorizes them. And that's not how values should work. Values should be, what do we want the type of people that work in our organization? What we need to find values that align with how they live their lives and how they believe in things, and then we have to look for people who have those behaviors. And that's really why the values are important. Our guests don't care what our values are necessarily. They don't see those. They only see the demonstrated behaviors. So if at Disney, if one of our values is that we, really care about our guests, we have to hire people that care about people. And that's where that alignment comes from. And so that's why I think that's why strong culture is such a great thing, because you know what it takes to compete. You know what it's going to take to work in an environment like that. And if we do our job right, the people who don't belong, they figure it out pretty quickly because they don't have that passion. Then maybe they don't have that passion for service. They don't have that servant leader attitude. Maybe they don't really enjoy working on teams, and pretty quickly they figure out that this is not a great place to be. And once again, I want to reiterate, it doesn't mean they're not valuable. It doesn't mean they're not good people. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't have great jobs. It just shouldn't be in the Disney environment, because that's what it takes. And they should probably find the environment where they're going to be successful. And that's kind of I guess, the secret formula.
And it's a good thing, right? Because I remember about 10 years ago, I was interviewing at a Danish company, and Danish companies do everything by committee, right? They're very, no one individual gets to make any decision for an organization, a department. Doesn't matter what it is, they do everything by committee. And I'm all about teamwork, but for me, I like to have a little bit of autonomy and make some decisions,
Sure.
that we shouldn't need to. If I want to, you know, put it to an extreme, decide what color paper pads we're going to be having in the office, yellow or white. I don't want to have to go to a committee to make that decision, right?
Right.
But they literally make decisions like that every single day on, by committee, and that would have driven me crazy,
Right.
absolutely crazy. So I'm glad I didn't get the job, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about it. Just think about sports. When you're, a lot of kids, I don't know about these days, but when I was growing up, you tried all kinds of different sports. And I remember, I went out, I wanted to play lacrosse. And the coach said, all right, if you need to go practice and you need to throw the ball against that wall 100 times on the left and 100 times on the right. And as soon as you can do that, come back and you can start practicing with us. And I never got there because I probably didn't have the passion to do that. So it's about, different athletes should be in different sports. And it's the same with work. It just happens to be in sports. It's much more obvious. If you're 7 feet tall, you're probably going to, go towards volleyball or basketball. And there's a lot of physical traits. It just, companies have to be good at recognizing people's talents internally and understanding if they're going to be able to thrive in that atmosphere. Because not only will they be able to, if people are passionate, can do a great job, they're satisfied and they do better work. So it makes sense all the way around.
So what about, how do you incorporate this into your messaging? Like, when does that messaging actually start with a candidate?
Yeah, I would say it probably starts in the Walt Disney World commercials. When you watch a commercial and you see the employees, the cast members, and you see the guests, you see the kind of interactions that Disney represents. And I think people start to get an idea of what kind of organization we are. I think, as I mentioned before, it used to be the video you watched when you came into casting, and now it's the video you watch before you even start applying for the job. Hey, these are the kinds of people we're looking for. And these are the kind of people who are successful at Disney. And if you feel like you have these traits, then please apply. So we don't tell people not to apply for jobs, but we do a lot of visual storytelling is a very powerful thing. Telling them stories about the magical moments that are created for guests, the kinds of the physicality of the roles. We want to make sure people understand that. Specifically, when we recruit at colleges, I've been to a couple with recruiters for college recruiting, and boy, after the presentation, I said, do you not want anyone to apply? Because they're brutally honest about the hours and you're gonna, if you don't have a car, you're gonna have to take a bus to work. We have buses that run. If you're late 3 times, you get a reprimand. If you get 3 reprimands, you're terminated. If you have an allergy, we need to know up front, because once you get there, if you're putting a food and beverage role, you're going to have to be in that role. You're not going to be able to transfer. And so we give it all out. And the good thing is Disney's got such a strong brand that people hear all that and they still apply, because we don't want there to be any secrets. We don't want to say, let's tell you half of the job. Once you get in there, you're going to have to figure out the rest. We'd really want to be up front. I would say the other thing, and big places like Disney, a lot of this is the case, I think, in the world now. Either people know someone who work in companies such as Disney and others, or social media has made it very transparent on what the work experience is like. And so when a lot of our candidates are investigating what company they want to work for, there's Glassdoor, there are blogs out there about what's it like to work in this company, what are the rules, how does it work? Yeah, I mean, it's all there. So I think the days of companies telling one story and actually living another are gone. There's so much more transparency today, because you can go out and find about anything, any product, any service. You can go on TripAdvisor, whatever that looks like. And so I think a lot of people are using that information now to inform themselves up front about what it's like to work in these places before they apply to the job.
So what do you think like companies need to fix in their current messaging?
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing. And I was sort of getting there and I kind of lost my way. Companies I think they need to probably worry less about messaging and more about having great cultures, because the messaging often is marketing, and marketing is always putting the best foot forward, and you want people to have the story. And so I think what when it comes to messaging, you need to make sure the employee experience is as good as you can make it, because those are the team members. Those are the people who are going to make the referrals. Those are the people who are going to either recommend working in your organization or not working in your organization. So I think you need to take real stories and take real employees and talk about really what it's like. And it doesn't have to be sugar coated, because people work at Disney. They say, look, I've never worked harder in my life, but I love it. I enjoy being busy. It's a great place to be. But instead of focusing on the messaging, focus on what that experience is like, because there's something we measure at Disney with our customers, and intent to recommend and intent to return. So if given the choice, now that we've gotten you to come to Disney once, we've done the marketing, we've given you the right quote unquote messaging, we got the right pricing, we got you to come here. Are you going to come back? How likely is it you're going to come back? And how likely is it you're going to recommend this as a vacation destination? And if we don't have people recommending us and coming back, Disney's in trouble, because you can't have 50 million guests a year coming without having return visitors. There's not enough people in the United States. There's not enough people in the world. So that's a big focus, is get the messaging, but make sure you're talking to people and telling them clearly what you're expecting. And a lot of people say, well, look, in this economy right now, I just need a warm body. And I know there's a practical approach to business right now. And people are saying, look, much less getting the best candidates, I need any candidates. And there's, you have to do certain things to get through this, but you can't stay that. It's a slippery slope to keep talking that way, because at the end of the day, your employees are your brand. They represent your brand. The way they deliver the service, the way they deliver to your customers is going to give the customers a reason to come back or not. And so I would say the messaging should align with your culture. It has to be authentic. It has to be genuine. And a lot of people, if you're doing it right, your employees will become your spokespeople to work there or not. I just talked to a guy I've been mentoring for about 3 years. He works for a health tech company up in Boston. And he got there about 6 months ago, 8-9 months ago, maybe. Really tough culture in his department. People weren't getting along. No one wanted to work with the department he was in, bad reputation. And he started working hard at it. He did some team sessions. He started talking to their internal clients and customers. And he got a call the other day from someone who left, a really talented leader who had left, And now, and he never knew her, but she called back and said, "Hey, I've talked to some people who work there and I've heard things have changed dramatically and I'd like to come back." And that was, and it wasn't the messaging, it was people talking to her about, yep, things have changed, the morale's better, we're getting, we're respected, we're organized now, people, we really know what we're doing, we have the right staffing, we have the right tools to get our jobs done. So this is the hard part. People focus so much on marketing. I personally think marketing is important, people have to know you exist, but you really got to focus on the value you're bringing, the experience, because I can sell you anything once, but I can't sell you anything twice, because once you use my product or service the first time, you're going to use your own judgment. I think that's what employees do also working for organizations.
Absolutely. And, when you're talking about some of these companies are really coming up against, not only the COVID, but people retiring and, just a lack of candidates in the marketplace. For example, there's a couple million recruiters in the United States right now. Let's say there's 2.3, 2.4 million recruiters across the United States. But on January 3rd, when I checked on some of the major job boards, overall there was 46,000 open positions, and 14,000 of those had opened up within the last 24 hours.
Wow.
There's going to be a shortfall, not only in recruiting, but across the board, right? It doesn't matter whether you're talking manufacturing or customer service or sales or, IT, DevOps. It does not matter. You're going to have some major issues with staffing. So something has got to give. I understand you need to kind of rely on that, you're hire for skills, hire for passion, hire for attitude. But one of those three is going to start slipping somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
Agreed.
prefer that you slip on skills because those are trainable. It is very, very difficult to train on passion and attitude.
Agreed. So I think there's two things, and it's a great point, Jeff. I think the first one is, given the choice long term, I can get people training. I can get them. Now it takes time. So that's one of the things. Well, I need this person up to speed today. Well, that person you need today isn't available. This person will be ready in 3 months. Well, how can I make that faster? Well, go back and have done something differently last year. That's usually go back in time. So that's the first thing. I agree on the skills piece. I think the other thing is, companies used to talk about culture as being a kind of a fringe benefit. It's an extra, it's a benefit, it's a nice to have. And what they're realizing now, it's a requirement, because it is an employee's market and employees can decide where they're going to go. You can only compete on salary for so long and pay for so long until, you're not making your margin anymore. You can only raise your wages so high. And that's one path to take. There's benefits involved also, but I think there's been a big shift that people are realizing how much time they spend working of their life. And they're saying, you know what, there's got to be more than this. And what I'm seeing with my kids and I'm seeing with other young adults, they're willing to have less, to have a better quality of life. My wife and I talk about it back in the late 80s, early 90s. We're like, how much money can we make? We want a car and we want stuff and we're going to work hard. And you tell me to work in parking and work 80 hours this week, I'll say thank you and I'll do it again next week. I never questioned it. And I'm not saying, once again, that's good or bad. That was just the time and the culture. And today, kids are saying, or young adults are saying, look, I'm not putting up with that. I'm not going to do that. It's not fulfilling. I see what happened. And I've seen my parents do all that, and there's no loyalty. You don't get anything out of that. I want to have experiences. And so, to your point, that piece of, training for skills, if you really want those people with attitude, you got to take great care of them. And there's a lot of topics out there right now, and in the administrative space, the work from home, do you work from home? Is it hybrid? Do you have to go to work? And I've just told organizations, just be upfront. If you're going to make people come in and do the commute and everything, be sure that you have to do that to get the quality of work, and explain to them why. And over time, the competition will tell you whether you need to change your policy or not, because that's now becoming a criteria that people are using for getting jobs. Do you allow work from home? And if you don't, then I'm going to go work someplace else. So it's not just about the pay anymore. Pay is just the base of competitive landscape. It's becoming all these other things. Do you understand that I want a balanced life? Do you understand that I want flexibility? And the companies who say, well, that's too hard, we're not going to do that, they're going to suffer from that, because there plenty of companies are going to be flexible and they're going to evolve.
Yeah, I think that um, having company or having employees come on site for many companies, it's going to become obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
It just is, right? By and large, there's really no reason to have, as long as people are getting their work done and producing revenue for the organization, they're doing a good job. Now, it opens up a ton of other issues, right? Side hustles. There's tons of people out there that they've got their main 40-hour-a-week gig, and then they've got some kind of side hustle, whether they're selling stuff on Etsy or, doing YouTube videos or podcasts or, selling real estate, whatever. They've got tons of little side hustles. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. First of all, most companies, the only thing they're able to measure is how many hours a week they pay you, and they assume you're bringing value all those hours, and that's the measurement they use. The reason, I think personally, I think the bottom line, the reason people don't like work from home or work remotely is because A, they don't trust their people, and B, they haven't figured out a way to measure their productivity, and that's their fault. It's not the employee's fault. If you can't figure out how much value someone's adding to your organization, you have a problem. And whether they add or don't add value in the office, or add or don't add value at home, it doesn't matter. I know lots of people who do a really good job of sitting in their office and have honed the art of pretending to work. They still get all their work done, but they get it done in 20, 25 hours. And the rest of that time, if they're not challenged, they'll do other stuff. They'll
Right.
figure out other things. And at home, it's even easier on this side hustle piece. I think some companies, there's a competitive piece, but people want to make more money. They want to have that other income stream. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure if that's okay or not. I think it might be okay. As long as you're giving me the value that I'm paying you for, you're getting everything done that I've challenged you to get done. And you're getting it done in the time I'm giving you, then I really don't care how you spend your time. And I know that's a very, kind of a broad statement. If you want to get more out of people, you got to spend more time with them. You have to be more clear on your expectations. And I think there's a way to engage them. But part of it is people want to make some more money. I think part of it is people maybe are bored. They want to do other things. And for other people, it's exciting to be an entrepreneur. I think, if I had the time at Disney to go out and learn to be an entrepreneur, I think I would have been a much better executive. I would have been much more common sense in my decision-making and not get into the whole corporate speak that we all tend to get into, and get much more focused on what really brings value. I think there's a huge value to that, is people learning how to be entrepreneurs and learn how to work on teams and organizations. Now I say that and people will say, well, how do you do that? I have no idea. But
It's
I
always
think,
the thing, right?
yeah, I don't know how you do it, but I think the philosophical idea of that is perfectly okay. You're working for an organization to deliver a certain amount of value, and they're paying you for that value. If they can't measure that value, or they feel like you're giving enough value, then you should use your time to do whatever else, as long as it doesn't conflict with that
Yeah,
organization.
I think that's the biggest thing, right? So, like a lot of software engineers, it might be difficult for you to be a software engineer for another software as a service company, right?
Absolutely. I think it
Especially
has
if
to be a
it's in
whole
your same.
nother industry or a whole nother
Exactly.
topic. Yeah,
Like I've
agreed.
got recruiters that work for me that also do real estate on the side, or they might be a mortgage loan officer on the weekends or something like that. I don't care about that stuff. That's not really
Sure.
competing with what I'm doing, either on my recruitment marketing agency or on the staffing agency side.
But you wouldn't
But
want them
if
working for another recruiter and taking the
no,
best
exactly, I
offer.
can't have that. I'm not going to
Sure.
pay you to work for me and then do some
Right.
contingency stuff on the side. That ain't
Yeah.
going to fly.
No, that's fair.
Right. So, I mean, any last thoughts here? We like to keep these around 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, I would say, when it comes to hiring talent, just if you don't have a really great foolproof way to hire, you need to come up with one. I think a lot of organizations think they have great hiring practices, but if you really dig into the numbers, look at your turnover in the first 90 days, and go back. When I was at Disney, they had metrics in place, and they could measure each recruiter's productivity, and they could see, okay, which recruiters, what was the average length of stay of their hires, what was the success rate of their hires, and you have to have good tracking, but you can figure out. And it was clear some recruiters were just really great at what they did, because boy, people they hired got promoted, they stayed a long time, they were very successful, and that was a way to kind of to measure that. So I would just make sure you understand how you're
It's
hiring.
kind of
So once again, it's
interesting
most
though that
important.
you're pinning that metric to the recruiter when really all they did was find the candidate, make the offer, but they weren't the ones that technically interviewed them for skill sets or attitude. That's ultimately the hiring manager's decision. The recruiter, once they make the offer, they're done. They rarely talk to the candidate, or the employee after that. So why is that?
Yeah.
Why is tenure being measured to the recruiter's performance?
Yeah, so that is probably just a business model piece, because when I worked at Disney, we are functional. And so when I get employees coming to Magic Kingdom, my team wasn't hiring these people. The casting area was. That was delegated to them, and they were sending me employees. And so I'd say, look, I need 50 food and beverage quick service employees in 3 months from now, and they would hire 50 people and send them my way. And we didn't have secondary interviews. Once you get into leadership management ranks, that's all management. That's the hiring leader. That gets there. But I usually, what I'm talking about here is frontline hourly employees. And so to
Okay.
your point, I think it's, I guess there's two models. One is if you have a department that's doing the hiring for you, like big corporate environments do for frontline employees, I think the metric I was talking about works. When it comes down to your point, am I getting a quality pool of people? I think that's where we can hold recruiters accountable. Am I getting a diverse pool of candidates? Am I getting a good diverse pool of candidates to choose from? And there's, I guess, certain things we can measure there. But it's true in that case, if I'm hiring a manager, I'm the hiring manager, I need to be on the hook for that. Now, just because you're the hiring manager doesn't mean you're an expert in hiring. And that's where you probably need to make sure you're getting some professional support to make sure you're asking the right questions and you're selecting correctly. I was not a great selector of talent. I did a lot of things great at Disney. I was good at what I did, but I was not a good selector because I'm a people person. I'd interview 5 people. I like all 5. So that's where I really started to get my hiring team to help me, and my HR team to say, help me think about these candidates and who's going to be the right fit. Because I tend to get, I'm a very optimistic person, and I need someone to tell me the shortfalls of some of the people I was interviewing. So
Honestly, I've been in staffing for 25 years, and when I can be very unbiased and objective about other people making hiring decisions. But when it comes to hiring people for my own company, I go a lot on gut, and I don't care about skill sets as much. I definitely go towards the passion and attitude, because I like people that I want to work with, people that I like. That is more important to me. And if I need to take 3-6 months to train them how to do, or buy them a training and put them through it, I'd rather do that and invest in them than sit there and bang my head against the wall with somebody that's going to be really high performer, but a pain in the butt to work with. It just drives me nuts.
And I'd call that an attitude issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for coming on the 10X Candidate Experience Show. Where can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, cockerellconsulting.com. All the information's there. My cell phone number's there. If you want to reach out, everything's there, and we follow up quickly.
What kind of consulting do you do? Just reiterate that real quick for me.
Yeah, sure. Valor and I, my wife and I, we do leadership workshops. We do a lot around culture. We have a workshop called The Method to the Magic to help organizations put structures in place of how to make sure that your leadership is creating the right environment for the employees. So the employees are supported, they're trained, have the right tools, and the right people are working to create an excellent customer experience, which leads to intent to return, intent to recommend. That's the model. And you could spend your whole lifetime trying to figure out how to get that right. I do keynote speeches. I do online webinars. Like I said, my book we wrote, How's the Culture in Your Kingdom? You can get on Amazon. The podcast is Come Rain or Shine. And if you have employees and you have customers and you're trying to make money, we could probably help you add value. Awesome.
I'll put all those links below, everybody. Other than that, Dan, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy New Year.
Make it a great one. Bye-bye, everybody.